Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tiffany. Now I was thinking about how, with the onset of COVID-19 and how it's really changing things around us. And I think coming out of this, certainly a lot more people are going to live much more meaningfully, a lot more intentionally. We're going to start making decisions and starting to do the things that are actually important to us, simply because we've realized how fragile life is. We've realized how unstable systems are. So I think definitely there's going to be a lot more sort of determined people coming out of COVID-19. And one key thing is that that level of determination does require also the ability to become your own cheerleader. I think unfortunately for too many of us, self-critical is the default setting. We find it much more kind of normal for us to be negative, to be harsh to ourselves, to entertain negative conversations in our minds about what we cannot do rather than what we can do. So even when I think about myself, the life I'm living right now, I've certainly come from a place of being quite afraid and talking myself out of things rather than talking myself into things. It's taken a lot of sort of mental rewiring to actually learn to encourage myself, because what I've found is that sometimes the world can be quiet in those moments when you're attempting something outside of your comfort zone. And if you're simply waiting for other people to encourage you, waiting for other people to cheer you on, waiting for other people to tell you you're doing well, then I think it makes the journey a lot more difficult. So keep on keeping on requires the cheerleader that you can be for yourself. So today I wanted to share how I've made that transition from being self-critical to becoming my own cheerleader. And the number one important process, part of that process, is to develop self-compassion. Now I see that I think how we treat ourselves really does reflect outwardly, even as much as we try to hide it. I mean, if you dislike yourself, if you are self-destructive, if you don't see yourself in positive, if you don't have a positive self-regard, I think eventually it does come out in the way you treat yourself, and other people can pick up those cues. So I think it's important to learn to kind of just treat yourself as you would other people. I think we're very easy to kind of give other people grace and give them the forgiveness. But when it comes to us, we're a lot harder on ourselves. So I think it's important to learn to let go of your mistakes, learn to let go of your failures, what you could have, should have done, right in the past. I think it's important to give yourself the grace of each new moment and think, what can I do differently now to impact the course of my future, to impact the course of tomorrow. And I think when you're in that state of mind, you actually begin to see yourself as someone who is just, you're just a human being. We all have our frailties, and I think it's important to give ourselves the grace just like we do to others. A second part of the process of self-criticism to cheerleader is do not define yourself by your brokenness. Now I think we all have our own sort of things that we've experienced in life. It could be trauma from childhood. It could be the sort of environment you grew up in. It could be sort of tragedy from relationships. It could be losing a loved one. It could be heartbreak. There's so many things I think that unfortunately can limit us in terms of how we see our sort of life narrative when we're not careful. So what I've learned is that we all have to bear our own suffering, but it's important to find meaning in that suffering and not just limit it to you being broken or the fact that life has happened to you. I think it's important to learn that you can rewrite your own narrative. You can choose to interpret things in a way that keeps you keeping on. You can give yourself the grace to heal, the grace to learn how to see your life differently, to learn how to forgive the things that have happened in your life. You can learn to let go, and I think that's in itself is a process that can take a while, and sometimes you might need some sort of support from a counselor or therapist or psychologist. But I think that's certainly something that is worth a journey that's worth going on, because if you're not careful, the past can come back to haunt you if you don't have the right sort of interpretation of it, or if you don't have the sort of right narrative. Because when you think about it, I think in any given moment, our behavior is always reflecting how we see ourselves. And if you're not careful, your most deepest, darkest perception of yourself can come to the surface in the moments where you really need to attempt something great. So yeah, I think it's important to not simply define yourself by your brokenness, but give yourself the space and the privilege, I think, to heal. My third tip on going from self-criticism to becoming your own cheerleader is to learn to tackle negative self-talk with self-improvement. Now, I think, I love affirmations. I think it's great to affirm yourself, to say, yes, I'm a wonderful human being, I do this, I'm capable of that. But sometimes, words can be empty if they're not followed by action. So rather than simply expecting affirmations to transform your life, I think it's important to begin to think about your strengths and think, how can I actually improve my strength? How can I invest in myself to, become better at the things that are my skills, so that I'm already, I have an interest in. So I think rather than simply talking, trying to talk yourself out of, kind of talk yourself into seeing your greatness, I think you can walk yourself into your greatness. So it's, set yourself challenges, small challenges, and think, okay, what can I do today to make tomorrow better? What can I read today to help me sort of rewire my brain and see myself in a better light? So yeah, I think, because at the end of the day, perfection is a myth, and you can aim for perfection, that is all well and good, but you can actually choose to take small actionable steps to become better, to be more bolder, to be more disciplined, to be more courageous. And I think by doing those small things, you begin to see yourself actually becoming more bold. And I think it does impact, so when you're faced with your greatest sort of challenges, you can look back and remember the time when you did this and you did that. And I think that in itself can spur you on. So that's it. So remember that. I think the most important thing to realize is that everything we do in life flows from how we see ourselves. So until you learn to become your own greatest cheerleader, then I think you will always hold yourself back. And that's it. Always remember, guys, that life rewards those who live intentionally. See you soon.